ever wonder why, after doing the inner work everyone talks about, you feel worse, not better? You dug through your trauma, held your past up to the light, called out your toxic patterns, and now you're stuck. You're not motivated, not excited. You wake up, and it's like nothing matters. This isn't burnout from overworking, it's a kind of emotional silence, and it hits right after the so-called healing begins. That drop off you're feeling, that dead space after confronting your shadow. Carl Jung saw it coming. He knew this would happen, and not only did he expect it, he understood exactly why motivation vanishes when the shadow surfaces. But no one really tells you this up front. They talk about enlightenment like it's a weekend project, like all you have to do is journal through your pain, and suddenly you'll be aligned, or whatever word is trending this month. The truth? Facing your shadow doesn't make you feel alive at first. It makes you feel lost. And in the next stretch of this, we're going to talk about why. Not from the angle of a self-help checklist, not from the lens of pop-psych wellness gurus who think shadow work is just writing angry letters to your dad and burning them. This is about what really happens to your system, your mind, your identity, your motivation after you stop pretending and start seeing. So, let's go there. Let's talk about what shadow work actually does to you, because that's where the unraveling begins. Shadow work sounds empowering when you first hear about it. The idea that there's a hidden part of you, unseen, repressed, quietly shaping your life, and all you have to do is face it to reclaim your power. That sounds like something worth doing. But here's what doesn't get mentioned. The shadow isn't just the dark stuff like anger or jealousy or shame. It's everything you buried to survive. Sometimes it's your ambition, your voice, your softness, your rage, and dragging all that back into awareness isn't neat. It's disorienting. Because what you're really doing in shadow work is tearing down the version of yourself that kept things running. You stop pretending, you stop pushing, you stop faking confidence or enthusiasm or kindness. And the moment you stop doing all of that, your entire reward system crashes. The things that used to give you a hit of motivation, even if it was shallow, don't work anymore. And so you feel empty. You might think you're depressed. Maybe you are, but it's a specific kind of flatness, like someone turned down the volume on your personality. This is where most people start panicking. They think the shadow work didn't work or made things worse. But that silence you're feeling, it's not a malfunction, it's part of the process. Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That sounds beautiful until you actually do it and realize just how much of your life was built around avoiding that darkness. The moment it becomes conscious, so much of your old identity loses relevance. That's the real shakeup. You're not just confronting buried memories, you're watching your entire internal structure loosen. It's not just about what happened to you, it's about how you built yourself in response. And once you see that clearly, the mask doesn't fit anymore. You stop being able to perform, you stop wanting to. But here's the twist. You don't have anything new to replace it with yet. That's where the collapse begins, and that's what we're getting into next. There's a moment, usually quiet, sometimes terrifying, where you realize you don't know who you are anymore. Not in a poetic, dreamy, soul-searching way, in a bone-deep, morning-after kind of way. You wake up and the ambitions that used to move you don't move you. The people you used to impress, you don't care. Even the old problems you used to obsess over feel distant, like they belong to someone else. That's the collapse. And it doesn't always look dramatic. It's not screaming or breaking things or some big cinematic meltdown. Most of the time, it looks like nothing. You sit there, you scroll, you stare at your to-do list and wonder why you ever cared about any of it. Because when you face your shadow, you're not just meeting the parts of you you've rejected, you're dismantling the entire version of you that was built without those parts. Think about it. If your whole sense of drive came from avoiding feeling worthless, and now you've looked that feeling in the eye, what's left to run from? This is why motivation dries up. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's because the engine that powered your life was built on some version of survival, on staying small or chasing validation or outrunning pain. And when that engine breaks down, nothing else takes over, not immediately. Carl Jung understood this. He talked about the persona, the mask we wear for the world, and how deeply we identify with it. So when you rip off the mask and realize that most of your choices, your values, your energy were built around that mask, of course, there's collapse. This isn't failure. This is the void after false motivation dies. And it's lonely too, because most people don't get it. You might try to explain, say something like, "I just don't feel like myself lately," and they'll tell you to push through, take a walk, find a new routine, but they're trying to fix a structure that no longer exists. You're not in a rut, you're in the in-between, and that place doesn't respond to productivity hacks or morning affirmations. This is where people start questioning if they made a mistake, if the shadow work was a detour instead of the path. But what they don't realize is, this collapse is the only honest way forward. You're not broken, you're shedding. But the space between what you shed and what grows back next, that's the part no one warns you about. That's the next chapter. This part is strange to talk about because it doesn't come with a label. It's not grief in the traditional sense. It's not depression in the clinical sense. It's something quieter, weirder. It's the space where you don't feel like anything. Your thoughts slow down. Your body feels heavy. You're not exactly sad, but you're not excited either. It's like someone muted the entire spectrum of feeling. This is the liminal space, the in-between. You've let go of who you were. You haven't met who you're becoming, and you're stuck in the hallway with no lights on. Carl Jung described this kind of internal transition as a death, not metaphorically, but psychologically, the death of the ego's illusions, the death of the false self. And just like in real death, there's stillness, there's absence, there's this sense that nothing makes sense anymore, because the frame you used to make sense of the world is gone. So you wait. And in that waiting, people get uncomfortable. They start scrambling to get back on track, to feel normal again. But that's the trap. The moment you try to rebuild from panic, you risk building the same thing you just tore down. This is what makes this phase so fragile. You don't want to go back, but you're scared to go forward, because forward doesn't have form yet. It's not defined. It hasn't shown you who you'll be, or what you'll want, or how you'll move through the world once this passes. So what do? Most people numb out. They reattach to distractions, old habits, relationships, identities, not because they believe in them anymore, but because anything feels better than nothing. But that nothingness, it's not meaningless, it's incubation. It's the psyche pulling inward to reconfigure, like a snake digesting after a long hunt, or a forest floor regrowing in silence after a burn. And here's the hard truth: no one can rush you through it, not even you. This part asks something most of us aren't used to giving: patience without direction, presence without performance. And it doesn't feel like progress, but it is. You just can't see it yet. Eventually, without warning, without ceremony, something shifts. It doesn't look like fireworks. It doesn't come with clarity or a perfect morning. Sometimes it's just this tiny flicker of curiosity. You notice a song sounds good again, or you open a book and actually want to keep reading, or you catch yourself thinking, maybe I'll go for a walk, and this time you mean it. That's it. That's the beginning. Not the kind of beginning that gets posted online, not the glossy transformation people love to romanticize, but something deeper, something that moves slow and uneven, like thawing ice. And it doesn't come from pressure, it comes from stillness. What you're feeling isn't your old motivation coming back. That part's gone. This is something new. It's the raw signal of your actual self, your core, trying to speak for the first time in a long time without being drowned out by the noise of expectation. And it doesn't speak in goals or plans. It doesn't come with a 5-year vision board. It starts with instinct, with preferences, with noticing that you actually like quiet mornings, or that you've always hated small talk, or that you work best when no one's watching. This is how the real self rebuilds, not by recreating what was lost, but by discovering what was never given a chance. Carl Jung didn't promise that facing the shadow would lead to instant clarity. What he offered was a map of the inner world. And on that map, the path to wholeness doesn't go in a straight line. It spirals, it loops, it stalls. But every time you return to yourself, you come back a little more honest. This is the part where new energy begins to take shape, but it's subtle. It doesn't drive you the way fear did. It doesn't yell. It invites, gently. And because it's quiet, you'll be tempted to overlook it, to go looking for that old fire again. But that fire was survival. This one is different. It doesn't ask you to prove anything. It doesn't need an audience. So if you feel something, anything, spark again, don't chase it too fast. Let it be small. Let it stay unformed. That's how it grows into something real. Most people quote Carl Jung without sitting with the weight of what he actually meant. His ideas weren't just poetic, they were dangerous, not in a reckless way, but in the way that real truth always is. The kind of truth that doesn't flatter you, that doesn't let you off the hook, that tells you plainly, if you really want to be whole, you're going to lose parts of yourself that you thought were essential. Jung didn't frame shadow work as a self-improvement tactic. He saw it as a confrontation between who you think you are and who you've always been beneath that. And the terrifying part is, sometimes those two selves have never spoken to each other. When you finally make that introduction, what follows isn't clarity, it's chaos. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming a fully integrated self, not just a persona shaped by family or culture or trauma, but a being that lives from the center, even if that center is constantly shifting. And what people miss is that individuation isn't glamorous. It's slow, private, and deeply destabilizing, because it strips away the scaffolding you've leaned on your whole life, the roles, the validations, the borrowed beliefs. Gone. And when that scaffolding disappears, your first response isn't usually gratitude, it's fear, paralysis, doubt. You don't feel stronger, you feel scattered. And that's not a detour from the process, that is the process. Jung knew that most people wouldn't complete this journey. Not because they're weak, but because it's too lonely, too uncertain, because society doesn't reward people who sit in stillness and say, I don't know who I am right now, but I'm not going back to pretending. He warned that the shadow, once exposed, doesn't politely disappear. It follows you. It waits to see if you're going to integrate it or reject it again. And if you reject it, if you force yourself back into the old mold, it doesn't just go quiet, it fights back, usually in the form of anxiety, apathy, self-sabotage. So if you're wondering why you lack motivation after facing your shadow, it's not because you failed, it's because you're finally seeing clearly. And seeing clearly means you can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee the mask. But here's the part Jung hinted at, quietly in all his writing, that underneath the mask and underneath the fear, there's a kind of energy that doesn't need to be chased. It just is. The problem is, you won't find it while looking for it. If you're here, really here, stuck in the fog after everything fell apart, this part isn't going to tell you how to fix it. Because the instinct to fix is part of the old system. That's what got you here in the first place. Always fixing, always tweaking, always trying to optimize your way out of pain. You're not here to fix anything anymore. You're here to listen. That might sound useless, but it's not. It's just uncomfortable because for the first time, you're not reacting. You're waiting, you're not performing, you're pausing. And in that space, something begins to happen. Very slowly, like a signal cutting through static. Maybe it starts with boredom, that strange restlessness that creeps in when your nervous system has nothing left to fight. And if you sit with that long enough, underneath it, you'll hear it. The faint whisper of what matters to you now, not what used to, not what should, what actually stirs something. Don't try to force clarity. Don't try to rebuild your life in a weekend. Start with whatever feels alive, even just a little. Drinking water and feeling it hit your throat. Stepping outside and noticing the color of the sky. Putting your phone down long enough to feel something stir inside you that isn't being fed by noise. That's the beginning of movement, not motivation in the old sense, hustle, pressure, goals, but something quieter, direction without force, want without urgency. And maybe it feels pointless at first, like it's not enough. But that's because you're still measuring it through the lens of who you used to be, the self that needed to be productive to feel valuable, the self that was always proving something. That self is gone. Now you're moving towards something else, something real, something that doesn't panic when you rest, that doesn't need applause to know it's alive. This is where Carl Jung's work lives, not in the glow-up stories, but in the days when just staying conscious feels like work. When you realize you're not trying to become a better version of yourself, you're just trying to become yourself, period. And that's not a motivational quote, that's survival. That's transformation, the kind that doesn't announce itself with fireworks. You might not feel ready. That's fine. Readiness is overrated. What matters is that you don't lie to yourself anymore. That's where the real movement begins. So here you are. Not who you were, not yet who you're becoming, just here, in this quiet, uncertain space that doesn't look like healing and doesn't feel like progress. But it is. Because the truth is, you don't lack motivation. You've outgrown the kind of motivation that came from running, from fear, from shame, from needing to be someone else just to survive the day. What you're feeling now is the space after that chase ends. It's the silence that shows up when the performance is over and the crowd has gone home. And yeah, it's disorienting. Of course it is. You've spent years, maybe decades, building a life around the parts of yourself you could accept, and now the rest of you is asking to be let in. Carl Jung didn't promise that this would feel good. He only promised it would be real. And the thing about reality is, it doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in pieces, in tiny choices, in strange moments of stillness that, if you're paying attention, feel like breath after drowning. So don't rush out of this. Don't package it up or try to make it look pretty for anyone else. Stay in it. Trust it. Let it shape you. And when the question creeps in again, why don't I feel motivated? Maybe the answer isn't that you're lost. Maybe it's that you finally stopped running. And now for the first time, you're walking towards something that actually belongs to you, quietly, honestly, completely.